We've got John Giem, our own club member, probably one of the longer time members. He runs the Wood Bank and has written numerous articles for the AAW magazine and just is full of all kinds of information. Tonight he's going to do a demo on multi-axis turning handles. So take it away, John.
Okay. I'm going to be doing multi-axis turning and give you an idea of how I got into this. Several years ago, I took a class from Lee Carter, and we turned a screwdriver. This has flutes in it right now, but when I first turned it, it was just round. And I was on vacation. I was down at my mother-in-law's and trying to tighten up some screws. My hand kept slipping. So I carved some flutes in it. Then I decided, well, let's see if we can come up with a different way of doing it that perhaps works a little bit better. And so I came up with these offset handles like this. And I made a few of them for Christmas presents and stuff like that. And then eventually I actually wrote an article for the American Woodturner. There's copies of it up here if anybody wants one. So that's what we're going to do tonight, is show you how I did some of that. And like anything else, if you only know one way to screw up, you're deficient in your knowledge. So I'm going to be trying to show you several different ways that are kind of unconventional in a way to do some of this stuff. Now, start off, Lee used these screwdrivers. You can get these down at Harbor Freight. Sometimes if you get one of their specials, you can get them free. But they run about $250 right now, I think what they're selling them for. And they also have an updated version that's just under $10, and I've got one of those up here converted also. So we're going to take this thing, and there's a metal ferrule in here, a metal insert that we've got to recover, and that's what we're going to start off with, getting that metal insert so we can use it. And be sure to ask any questions if something comes up. So start off with, you're going to take this. I'm going to leave the chuck on, but I could take that and shove it right up against the spindle. Got to pay attention to safety. I'm getting too much stuff on my head right now. We've got hearing aids, safety glasses, regular glasses, microphone. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a spindle gouge and just kind of trim off that plastic so that we can get down to the actual insert so we can use the thing. That better? Somebody say something about the mic? How's that? Okay. Let's see if the lathe runs. I should have tested that before I started. One thing real quick. I've got a cone center here. Some of you may not have a cone center, so you can make your own. This is just a regular live center, and I turned a piece of wood to fit over the top of it tightly. So I've got a cone center that I made. So I encourage you to improvise like that. If you don't have exactly what you want, figure out how to do it without doing it anyway. Now, occasionally we have to stop and get rid of the plastic because it doesn't fly off nice little wood chips like we're normally used to. And different screwdriver handles will have different size ferrules in there, or inserts rather. And my lathe at home kind of spoils me in a way because it's got a crash bar across the front, so I can just take my knee and tap it and stop the thing. So the challenge is to get that down far enough that I can get the insert out, but yet I really don't want to damage the screwdriver, the insert, or my spindle gouge. I felt I'm making contact. See where it's starting to break through there? Gets us up here where you can see it. So there's what we're after. Okay, now if we measure that, it'll give us an idea of how size hole we want to cut. Here it is. Now if you look at this closely, it's smooth up here, and then it's got a hex down here. So that measures a 1/2 inch. But if you go up here to the hex, across the points on it, it measures more than that. And it's about 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to try doing a 9/16 inch hole in there. And here's our block of wood we're going to use. This is Russian olive. Now I could turn this between sitters if I wanted to, and I'd have to turn a tenon on there and then clamp it in the chuck. But we also know that we can put square stock into the chuck. So that's what I'm going to do here. And to make sure it's straight, I will bring my live center up here. And I've already got those marked. I think everybody knows how to mark those things, right? Okay. So now I've got that centered, the position I want. And I tighten it up nice and tight, just as tight as I can get it. The other thing we like to do is help our drill bit a little bit. There's several ways of doing this. Probably the simplest. Some people say a skew is only good as a scraper. So it all depends on what your preference is. But basically what I want to do is I want to make a little indentation there to help my drill bit enter into the wood. Sometimes if it's just flat, depending on how the drill bit's ground and the wood grain and so forth, you can get things kind of wobbling around a little bit. So let's try to make a little bit of an indentation in there. That should be enough to get us started. Now, how deep do we drill it? Well, if we take our insert and put our drill bit, our screwdriver in there, we want it to go down about that far, right? So we want to drill down about that far. So if we look at this, different people have different ways of handling this, but you could use masking tape, you could use a Sharpie. I happen to have a Sharpie in my hand. So let's see. Got to go down about that far, doesn't it? So about there. Just past that drop off on the diameter of the drill bit. How many of you use to drill a hole in wood like this? Looks like most of you have. Well, as you're drilling in there, you notice that the wood chips are coming out. And I watched that real close. And I don't like it when they quit coming out because you can get things bound up in there. And I was making some pepper grinders, and by golly, the thing chips quit coming out, and I stopped the lathe, and the drill bit wouldn't come out either. Everybody awake? So when you start getting down in there further, you have to back off periodically and clean that out. At home, I have a air hose that I use quite a bit. And I drill a little bit extra deep. Okay. Any questions so far? So in effect, this has got to go in there. Do we want to do that now? No, we want to put a ferrule over the outside of it. A ferrule, it can be whatever type of tubing you have at hand. It could be steel, it could be copper, aluminum, whatever you've got handy, and whatever your particular style goes for. Now, somewhere around here I have I should have.
So, John, the local plumbing department's a great place to get those ferrules, right?
Yeah, local plumbing department works real well for that. But I have some cut here for the place. Well, it's hiding from me. Basically, it was cut off of one of these things. Where's it hiding? Here's a large one that I cut for a different screwdriver. It'll show up at the end of at the end. Well, I got some backup stuff, so we'll work with that. Okay. Basically, what we'll want to do is bring this up and hold it in position. Well, we've got that oversized one. Let's use it. Well, I had that measuring tool here a while ago. What did I do with it? We don't have a thief around here, do we? Well, what I was looking for was,
In the box.
oh, standing up. I was looking at it edgewise, so it wasn't showing up well. Okay. So if we measure this, this is cut from 1-inch tubing. I would normally use a 3/4 inch for this, but we'll use 1-inch tonight. Now what you want to do is cut that down and have it fit over on the end, but yet it'll be a friction fit the rest of the way. And this is a inexpensive vernier, and it's been modified, because verniers you normally would buy cost you 40 or 50 bucks. I think I paid about 10 bucks for this one. And I round off these corners here. That allows me to actually make measurements on these things. So I'm going to round that down a little bit, and then we will cut us a ferrule on there. Crank that out a bit to give me a little more room for my banjo so I can get my tool rest in there where I want it. Okay, so I'll determine the length I want for that recess, and I will mark it so I can see what's going on. When you're marking things with a pencil like this, you want to point down, because if it's got any kind of a catch on it, you really don't want to lose your pencil. It's a good starting point.
Hey, John, a question for you when you do that.
What's the question?
So you use the calipers to get the diameter. Do you set them just a little bit wider initially, or do you just set them right on?
I have it right at 1 inch. It's not My tenon isn't down all the way down, so it's not sliding over completely unless while I'm on the wood. So it's a little bit on the large size right now.
So you put it on, but you don't slide the calipers all the way through the wood, so to speak.
I will do that when I'm getting the final size, yes.
Okay, but not initially.
I don't want to go down too far yet. So I'm taking a step at a time. I'm cautious.
Just checking your technique.
Yeah, that's okay. Keep me honest. Now what I can do is I can check and see if that fits over that yet. And like I said, I don't quite have it down all the way. Just barely fits over that. But that's a little bit large for what I want. So I'm going to take a scraper and fine tune it just a little bit. Now, eyeballing it, I can tell that I need to take it down a little bit more. See, now it goes over that and not there, and we can. That should be close enough. Now, everybody's got a mallet at home, don't they? Yes? Yes? Okay. Okay, so that gets us our position there. Now we can take our ferrule and we can drive it home. Now, if we don't have that, take our insert and drive it home. If we don't have that ferrule on there, then depending on how thick you have this, you can easily crack the wood. Okay. Any questions so far? There's nothing like going in there and giving a little bit of help fit. Okay, now at this point, we're through with the chuck. Let's see, how do we lock our chuck on our spindle on this guy? This one? That one. Okay. There we go. This is probably older than anybody else in the room. If I remember correctly, they used to send these out with every little car you bought. You know, back when you used to have bumper jacks and that type of stuff on your cars.
So John, that is just like a press fit on those pieces, or do you end up gluing those in?
Say again, please.
So the ferrule on the outside and the insert on the inside, do you end up gluing those in, or is that just like basically a friction fit?
I don't use glue unless I make a mistake.
Okay, unless it's too loose.
Yeah, that's why I want a tight fit. A little bit about glue. I have, upon occasion, made them too loose and had to put glue on there to hold the ferrule on. Now, if you the insert's too loose, start over. But there's two types of glue that are commonly used. One of them is CA glue, and the other one is epoxy. And depending on what I'm doing, if it's short term, I might use CA glue, but if long term, no. The reason for that is experience has shown me that the CA glue isn't real good for long term. It will be too brittle, it'll crack, and in some cases I've even had it delaminate. I remember making some repairs to a bowl, and I used it for dog food or dog feeding, and after a couple of years, the CA glue just came out. It's delaminated. I can put this away. Okay, now we're going to go to a spur center, or I'm using a step center. The important thing here that's unique about this is it's got a spring-loaded center pin. That way it won't distort things too bad. Right now, while we've still got a square block, I want to go ahead and set it up and mark it for the offset points. There's a couple of ways of doing that. You can take a compass and draw a 1-inch circle in there, and then use the indexing on your lathe to find those critical points. Now, that works, but if you're making a bunch of things, you have a tendency to find an easier way. And that's one thing I want you to think about is that are you going to make one of something, or are you going to make more than that? If you really want to learn the technique, some particular technique, make about a half a dozen or a dozen of the items, and then you start learning how to simplify things. Okay, now this one, I'm setting this up so that I can work on this end down here. Now, where do you want me, Vince? Okay, so you can see that? Okay. What I could do is I could draw a 1-inch circle in there and then proceed to work with it. Now, what I'm going to do is I made a template. If you can see that. The template shows the 1-inch circle, and I've got the 120-degree points around there. And I can put this through there, and I've got it at position. Now, if you are working with some of these more exotic woods and you got some flaws in there, you can plan ahead and determine where you want to have your flat spots go so that you can minimize that. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm marking one of the offset points and keep that position and mark another one. And then go over here. Got to keep them aligned. Okay, so I've got my center point and 3 offsets. Those are kind of hard to see, and in effect, they're going to be difficult to see when you put them on the lathe. So I'm going to go ahead and mark a little bit better. Somewhere around here. There we go. mark them deep enough, dark enough that I can see what's going on. Now, one of the tricks to marking things is I've got that ice pick in the center hole, and then I can line up with this hole out here, and I draw that line all the way out, and I do it on the other side also. So that gives me a good indicator of where that axis is. Now I'll go over here to the other one. Now I used to do this on the lathe using the indexing on the lathe spindle itself, but that became a little bit of a problem, or when you do a bunch of it, it gets kind of slow. But now, in order to find those holes, I'm making additional marks in there so I can find them later. And I will enlarge them just a little bit, make them a little bit easier to work with. Now I'm going to label them. It's kind of arbitrary, but let's call this one A. Let's call this one B. And this one C.
Watch Denver 7 News weekday morning starting at 4.
By marking that way, I can keep track of them a little bit better than if I can just manually. Any questions so far? Yeah. You're going to have to talk a little louder. They're going to pass you the mic.
Distance from the center.
Okay, the distance from the center is half inch. It's on a 1 inch circle.
How did you come up with that distance? I do different sizes, and it's always a hit and miss sort of thing as I play with things until I find something I like.
I don't know about you, but I don't remember a lot of details from 15 years ago. But
I have trouble from yesterday.
the way I'd think about it right now is I would experiment with it and do some intelligent guessing.
That's about what I do. I just wonder if there's some kind of formula or something, but it's just you play with it, turn a little, play with it again until you find something you like.
I play with it until it feels right on my hand. If it doesn't feel right in your hand, we did something wrong. And then we make mistakes, do we? Okay, so I've got that marked, got those points marked on there so we can refer to them later. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on here and make it round and start making a profile of my handle. You know, the other thing you have to be careful with when you select your blank and doing this roughing is that you want to leave enough material out here so that when you do the offset later, it doesn't break off. So consequently, I'm going to leave this in this area here. I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to turn down this way. Questions? Now, did I screw up my mic? Is it still okay? Now, got to use all of our toys, right? So I'm going to use a rough and gouge this time. I always put my hand on the lathe while I'm speeding it up so I can feel the vibration. I seldom look at the speed indicator. It says I'm running 1260 right now. Question? That help? Okay. What I was saying is I seldom look at the speed indicator. On my lathe at home, it's down there. Not as convenient as this one. So let's just rough this thing down. Okay, in making a bunch of these things, I made a little template to help me guide as to where I want the dimensions on this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the locations where I want to put depth mark, or going to cut grooves in there at a specific depth. How many of you remember when you were younger doing puzzles where it's connect the dots? That's what we're going to do here. I'm now constructing the dots, and later we're going to connect them. Now, one of the things I do at home, I brought my toys with me. I got a big magnet up here that it uses to help keep track of stuff, keeps them from losing them. And I have a magnet on my template also. Okay, now, this first mark here is 15/16, so I'll set my vernier to that. I'm getting ahead of myself. I can't see those little marks. I got to make them bigger. I can see that better. And there's the next one. And the next one. I have to check my tool rest. I want it close, but not so close it's going to be on the bevel. I want the tool rest out far enough that I'm on the regular shank of the tool. Okay, now let's go through and make our depth cuts. Now, quite often when you're doing that, if you're going down very deep, you'll get too much friction on the side of your tool, so make it a little bit wider. Now, as a sidelight about a parting tool, it can be used to do a peeling cut, rubbing the bevel like we are here, or you can use it for just as a scraper, and only use it for bevel rubbing on spindle turning. What happens if you're using it for bevel rubbing when you're cutting off a bolt? Any idea? Yeah, it catches that end grain. And I had one of these things taken away from me and thrown across the room when I was first starting out. You learn fast not to do certain things. It took the parting tool away from me and it bent it. Luckily, no one was hurt, including me. And one more. Now, these are guidelines as opposed to absolute. Important thing is when you get finished with your handle, it feels good to you and you're happy with it. If you're not happy with it, something's wrong. Okay, those are my depth cuts. And when I'm turning, I don't want to erase my points. I'm going to connect the dots. So I'll take a pencil and go in there and mark each one of those. There we go. It's a matter of getting rid of the waste wood at this point. And I like to use a scraper on this to just kind of smooth it up a little bit. Refine it just a little bit. So there's our basic shape. And like I said before, got to feel good. Harry, you want to check it? You don't want to check it? Your hand's different. Okay. Okay, any questions so far? Pretty straightforward spindle turning. Okay, now we're going to do things where things get kind of interesting, a little bit challenging in a way. We want to, well, I want to take the corner off of this thing. Got to make sure I stay on the center. I want to take the corner off down here just to make things a little bit easier. How many of you turn right-handed? How many of you turn left-handed? How many of you turn both? Okay. When I first started off turning, I didn't know that there's right-handed and left-handed. But what I knew is I didn't like shavings flying in my face. So I wound up turning left-handed. And later I found out that there's a name for what I was doing, and that was I was turning left-handed. Okay. It's not absolutely necessary to knock those corners off, but it makes it a little bit friendlier if we do. Okay, now here comes the fun stuff. We want to put lines down here 120 degrees apart, and they're related to these ABCs over here. And you notice I've got the lines going all the way across, that I have the actual mounting points identified. There's the camera. That camera. There we go. Makes a difference if I know which camera to point at. It's like having a mirror. You can't see your hand, and you're trying to draw something in a mirror. Sometimes it gets a little bit confusing. So you can see the different points here, A, B, and C. C's here. Then there's our actual center point. And we're going to set up the height of this tool rest such that I could draw those lines accurately to achieve things. So what I'm going to do, this is a pattern follower, pattern tool. I'm going to start off by making it straight across there. I have seen these advertised recently, but they're plastic as opposed to metal ones. So I'm showing my age a little bit here. And to make things easier, I've got a little level that I'm going to be using. And the way I do that, the objective is to set the height of this tool rest to make it easier for me to mark those guidelines. And to help me a little bit, it's not absolutely necessary, but to help me, I've got a little spirit level that I use. And ideally, and we're pretty close, spirit level is showing its level, and this comes out right even with the center line as I've got this set up like this. Now, there are a multitude of ways of doing what I'm doing. This has happened to be the way I like doing it. It's fairly fast and simple. The article I have there talks about 3 different ways of doing it. Okay. Now, I've got this set, and I need to leave it at that height for right now. Okay, now I'm going to put this back on there. And it's at the, I'm still mounting it on the center line, if I do it right. Yeah, okay. Now I'm going to start off by taking the A point right here. It's going to be hard for you to see it, but I'm turning that around horizontal. I'm going to take this guide and make it match that profile. Now, if you don't have one of these guides, you can actually use a piece of cardboard and cut it out to make it fit. So that's another way of doing it. Now, what I'm doing it wrong. Got it upside down from what I started off with. Due to the way the bottom is set, I want to have that side on the tool rest. Okay. Now, if you remember when I drew those, put those guidelines on there, marked those points, I actually drew those lines all the way out to the edge. And if everything is right now, that's going to be level, which it just about is, okay. Is lined up with the, you can't see it from, you don't have an angle for it, but it's that line that drew all the way across the diameter, it's lined up with this edge right here and comes across. And I take a pencil, I just draw a line across there. It's a lot of work just to get a line in it.
Hey, John, are you marking that on the same side as the axis, or are you marking it on the opposite side of the axis?
I'm lining this up with the point A,
Okay, so it's on the same side, you're marking it on the same side as
same size as the
the offset point.
offset point, yeah. Now I move it over to the next one, and that happens to be C in this case. If I rotate the other direction, it would be B. So I line that up. And what I've found is that if you have this line through the center point of normal axis and draw that line all the way across, you can just about line this up with your guide and you're pretty good shape. You don't always have to use that spirit level. And there's B. Okay, now I've got those 3 lines around there. What are they for? Any idea? Went to a lot of trouble to do them. What are they for? Yeah, that gives me a guide as to where I'm going to turn to. So I've got one here, one here. Something doesn't look right. Okay. Well, we'll see how it turns out. I think the process is okay, it just doesn't look right to my eyes. This gap here looks a little bit large. Our eyes will play tricks on us sometimes. Okay, so now we've got those marked. Any questions so far? Okay, so I'm going to put this down here and put it on point A. And we want to make sure that that is pretty much straight up and down. Okay. So now it's going to come around here, and yeah, it clears. Now, here you have to be very careful and do bevel rubbing. If those lines are off slightly, it's not going to make that much difference, but it just won't give us the guidance that we really wanted. So let's see if I've messed up. Use whatever tool you're comfortable with. You can use, you got to use bevel rubbing. Let's start there. If you don't use bevel rubbing, you're going to be in problems. I'm going to slow it down. Now, when you're doing this, you've got to look at the horizon. And you're doing this partially by feel, partially by trial and error. Now we stop and see where we're at. Okay, so now here's our guidelines. We're right on the guideline here. We're slightly off there. That's telling me that I'm probably about the right depth, but I may have one of these lines mismarked, like I'm a little bit concerned about a while ago. You can use, where'd my spindle gouge go? Now, I like to use a spindle gouge on this part of the time because getting down in this corner down here is important. Go down there as far as you can, but you cannot necessarily go down far enough. And let's see which, okay. You can see right here, or I can see right here, is that I'm at the line here, but slightly high there, so I need to come on down. I need to clean this up down here. So it's kind of a guided trial and error. And again, look at the horizon. Not too bad. Okay, now let's go to point B. And it's important to get this line that goes across your diagonal. Try to get that as vertical as possible. If you don't have it, lined up this way, you could cause yourself to be off a little bit, which I may be, but we'll see. I've been off before, but it isn't catastrophic. And be sure you keep that tailstock tight because you don't have much grabbing onto your wood there. Take very light cuts when you're doing this because you really can't tell where you're at relative to those lines while the thing's still spinning. What you can do is watching the horizon, you can see any bumps, any irregularities on there. And if you can see this line right down here, our guideline, we're pretty much right on there. There's a little bit of bump right here. I need to take that off. Okay. Now let's go to point C. And if you look at this, I don't know where I went wrong, but you look at it, got a big gap here and a big gap here. Telling me that I got those guide marks wrong someplace. But it's going to turn out all right. When we get through, nobody will know. I'm not going to tell you I made a mistake. Notice I'm switching between right and left-handed turning here. Any questions so far?
So, how do you sand it, and how much do you sand it as you're doing this?
Okay. You're a mind reader. I'm just getting ready to talk about sanding. I didn't think you guys wanted to watch me do a lot of sanding, so I did not bring my electric drill with me. But what I typically do at this point, I have an electric drill with a 2-inch sanding pad on it, and I take this and I'll sand it down. Well, actually right now I would take a scraper and clean that up a little bit, and then sand each one of these one at a time, because you can't sand this while it's spinning. Normally what I'll do is I'll sand this much of it before I ever start turning these flutes on here, these offset surfaces. And that will give me a good surface down here. And then when I get through, let me go ahead and use a scraper on this and clean that one surface up a little bit. And sand these individual 3 surfaces by hand or with a electric sander, depending on what you've got available for you. But a flat scraper works real well for taking up the ridges on that, but you have to be real careful with it. And a lot of it is by feel more than anything else, because you can't really see that much detail to it while it's spinning. Okay, now that we got those flutes on there, so we got our sides on there, and it feels nice, feels okay. If it doesn't feel good, you did something wrong. Change it. Now we're ready to go back and take this end off. Sand it like Chris was talking about. And quite often, like right here, you'll have some nice ridges that are uncomfortable where these flutes, these flat surfaces meet. So while it's spinning, quite often I'll take a piece of sandpaper and sand that while it's spinning, just knock those tops off. Now, these samples over here that I did, I sanded those to 120 grit and stopped. I did not go beyond that. My reasoning is that those are tools. I don't need something slick in my hand. the objective to making this offset handle is so you can handle it better. So I stop at 120. And then comes the question of finish, what kind of finish you want to put on it. You could go with no finish and just let it develop its natural patina. These over here, I've used a Minwax tongue oil finish on them, and used about 2 or 3 coats, primarily for the purpose of protecting them from moisture and such as that. Incidentally, let me pass this around and let you look at it a little bit. When you are choosing your wood for stuff like this, you want to use a piece of wood that's interesting. And I had several people look at that handle, and I asked them what kind of wood it is. They had difficulty identifying it. It's obvious to some of you what it is, but most people it's not. It's lilac. Thing that has real nice flowers on it, real nice smell. Any questions so far?
John, I believe when you use no finish on it, that's called palm oil.
Yeah. You guess you didn't catch it. He's pointing out that when you put no finish on it, just use your hand. That's palm oil. So that's palm oil from
As opposed to tongue oil.
as opposed to tongue oil. Okay, yeah. Okay, at this point, actually, after I got through marking this, I have the ability to freedom to change the height of my tool rest as needed, because we only need that height restricted when we are making those marks. Okay, now we can finish this thing off. Had to slow it down while we're doing the offset turning, but we can speed it back up now. Basically, we're just cutting a cove in here. Now, one of the things that happens when you're doing this, you notice right here, there's a ridge right here. When this offset flute comes down, and now you've got this ridge right here. You have to ask yourself how you're going to get rid of that. One way is to just make the handle a little bit shorter, or if you don't want to do that, you can grab a chisel and we can carve it off. It all depends on what you're wanting to do. I like a little bit of extra length on the handle.
John,
Yes.
once you made that cove, couldn't you go back to your 3 offset points and basically just knock that little edge down, turn it offset?
Why didn't I think of that? No, there's a dozen ways to skin a goose. Or more than one way to skin a cat's the old phrase, I guess is. So there's all sorts of ways of doing that. And yeah, you could go back and as long as you haven't lost those center points. the problem is that by this time, when you start making this cove down here, depending upon the wood you've got, this surface area or this area right here is getting real thin, and I've had them fracture on me. So I guess you could say that was my bias, is that I did not go back to that because I was afraid of it fracturing off.
So the solution to that is start with the longer blank.
Yeah, but remember, if you have a longer blank, that affects the amount of offset you get. You might have to, instead of using a half-inch radius, you might have to go to 5/8 or 3/4. So now that's the other thing you wind up with, is if you're making a longer handle, like a tool handle for a lathe tool or something like that, you may want to change the amount of offset, things like that. So it's a matter of don't be afraid to experiment and make changes. The person that never makes a mistake isn't learning very much. You learn by making mistakes, finding corrections, and correcting it. Now, at this point, I've got some sandpaper around here someplace. I would go through and sand this. I've got 150 grit here. I wouldn't go any finer than that, but at home I'd be using a drill with 150 grit or 120 grit, and that would smooth it down a little bit. And I think what I'm going to do is when I get this thing sanded, then put probably use tungsten finish on it. I'll make it available for a drawing at our party over Chris's. So that'll give people a little bit more incentive. Now, as far as getting this cut off, I like to use this little parting tool. Now, the thing that's unique about this tool is it's thin, which is nice. You probably can't see it in the video, but the bottom part here is flat. This is where I grind when I want to sharpen it. But the top is actually concave. And being concave, that means that the center is recessed a little bit from the two edges. So when it cuts in, it cuts the sides smooth as opposed to tearing. A regular parting tool, when you go in, it tears the sides. It doesn't cut it. Any questions on that? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the tool rest to start with. Okay, I'm going to cut this off, and when I cut it off, if you'll notice what I'm doing, I'll leave a little bit of a tab on the end of the tool, on the end of the handle. Then I'll carve that off with a carving knife or sharp knife. Any reason why? Tear out, right. Because at some point, the scrap is going to break off. And you get a little bit of tear out. I want it to be in that tab and that waste material I'm going to carve off, as opposed to going into the handle that I want to keep. So I can kind of shape that end a little bit. And at this point, I would grab my carving knife, carve that off, and then sand it down and finish it up. Now, at home, I've got a belt sander. And I've been known to take this thing over the belt sander and smooth that off as opposed to a carving tool. So use whatever tools you've got the way you want to do it. Questions, comments? Oh, there's supposed to be another one over here someplace. There it is. Yeah. Compare the two. This one is their latest version down there at Home Depot. This has got, what is it? Harbor Freight, yeah. They claim it's got 10 different tools and it's actually got 11. And this one, they claim I think it's 6, but it's actually got a little bit more than that. So I'll let you look at this, and I will finish it up and have it available at Chris's party. Questions, comments? Yeah. Come on, where did I make my mistakes?
So for your one that you have, the ice cream scooper, what kind of finish, did you put tung oil on that since it's more,
I've got
less
tongue-
of a tool?
The ice cream scoop, yes, I've put, this is lilac, and I've got, like 3 coats of tung oil finish on it. But this is such a hard, dense wood that the tung oil just didn't soak in. It's kind of interesting, the different kind of woods that I have used. Some of the woods are so dense, the tung oil just doesn't soak in. And others, like pine or basswood, are so soft that the wood finish just soak right in. Yeah, Chris?
So, a lot of the tung oil finishes are pretty thick. Did you ever consider thinning it to maybe get a little more?
The tung oil finish that I have, made by Ben Wax, when I first open up a can of it, it's real thin. And as it ages, it'll get thicker. And to me, that's telling me that the oxygen is getting in there and is cross-polymerizing. Now, with regards to finishes, there are 2 basic types of finish you may or may not be aware of. But one type of finish, the tung oil, linseed oil, and walnut oil, those soak into the wood and they will cross-polymerize inside the wood, and they provide a nice protection, but they're not long wearing. The other type of wood is a surface coat, like your polyurethanes and varnishes. They stay on the surface of the oil, not on the surface of the wood, not going into the wood. And they may long wearing like a floor, wooden floor such as that. But if you use them in, let's say a cooking utensil or a salad bowl, and you get a scratch in it, the liquid can get underneath that finish and it'll delaminate. So that's kind of the differences between the two. If you're using a butcher block, people quite often use mineral oil. Mineral oil soaks into the wood, but it never cross-polymerizes. It stays soft. Another one that some people try using is salad oil. It will not cross-polymerize, but it will turn rancid. So you want to be careful in using your salad oils. Make sure you don't have problems with that. Yes?
Another finish question. So if you use walnut oil or tung oil, one that soaks in, do you ever let it dry and then put like a wax over it?
Will I ever do what with it?
Put like a wax coating on it.
Yeah.
Might give it a
Typical
little-
sim
a little
finish
more,
I use on 90% of my stuff. I'll use 2 or 3 coats of tung oil. First coat will soak in real fast, and second and third coats don't soak in as much. And then what I'll do typically with salad bowls and stuff like that is I will then use a Beal buffing system and use the what do they call it? It's the rouge buffing, and then go to the white diamond, and then go to wax. I use that on most of the stuff. Put a wax coating over the top of it.
So that'll give you more, a little more protection.
Yes, give you more protection, and it will bring out the luster on it. And how many of you know what Jatoyance is? Okay, for those of you don't, Jatoyance is when you look at a wood grain, it looks three-dimensional. And with that, the buffing system does a pretty good job of bringing that out if that particular piece of wood has that capability. Some people have turn their nose up at cottonwood, and I've had real good luck with cottonwood, and then I get a good finish on it, and especially if it's a curly version, then you look at it and you say that surface is very irregular, it ripples all over it, but you run your finger across, it's perfectly smooth. And that's because of the way that the light goes into the wood grain and interacts. One of these, this guy, I don't have a real high gloss finish on it, but when I was working with it, and while the tung oil was wet on here, it was showing some Jatoyance. So I have a suspicion that if I go back and buff this down real tight and real wood and put some wax on it, I can probably bring that out on this particular piece of wood. More questions? Everybody's going to go make one and bring it to the next meeting? That's your challenge, is to go exercise this, figure out where you could use it and where it worked for you. I had 3 or 4 copies of the article. I see you picked one up. Great. That was published in the December 2013, wasn't it? Of the American Woodturner. And we covered a lot of stuff in here tonight that is not in that article. Hopefully I filled in some of the vacancies and gave you an idea of where things are a little bit different. You can fill it out. When you're writing an article like that, you're space limited. I don't want you to talk like we do here. Any others?